me, is requesting to amend. Specifically, the amendments are to the ability to and the license certificates and special conditions section. The change to the license certificates and special conditions section will remove specific language about CPR AED requirements. It was replaced with language in the ability to section that references adhering to post regulations. You may recall that we brought something similar to the deputy sheriff series. So this is a similar change or the same change, and we're just updating these job classifications as well. And this is for your review and consideration.
You mentioned CPR AED.
Correct.
Oh, okay, so I did hear that.
Yes.
Yep, the initials correctly. I know what AED is. So. Any questions from commissioners? Chair will entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Iverson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Commissioner Atwood.
Yes.
We have 4-0 vote to approve.
Okay. Item 4E, 10260, amendment of senior district attorney investigator classification specification.
Yes, so the same changes were made to this job classification as the previous item. And I did want to note the peace officer unit was advised of the recommended changes and is in agreement with this change, as well as the other classifications within their unit. This is for your review and consideration.
Okay, and I see item 4F and 4G are the same thing, so
Correct.
I assume that explanation, so we can move this along. Okay, we are not voting on them as a group, so
Correct.
each one will be voted on independently. Is there any public discussion of item 4E? There being none, Chair will entertain a motion for acceptance.
Quick comment. So D, E, F, and G are all the same.
Correct.
Are there specific changes that are different amongst each of those?
No, it's the exact same change. The only difference is that D, E, F, or D, E, and F are within the peace officer unit, and the chief of DA investigation is not represented. So that is the only difference in the items, but otherwise the changes within the job classification itself are the same.
Thank you.
So right now we are voting on 4E. Do I hear a motion to accept?
I move to accept.
And we have a motion to move and the second, roll call, please.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Commissioner Iverson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes.
Commissioner Atwood,
Yes.
4-0 vote to approve.
We move on to 4F, 10261. We know the specifics. Do I hear, is there any public comment? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
And a motion for, or a second to the
Second.
motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Commissioner Iverson,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry.
You already
I'm
voted.
sorry.
This isn't
Commissioner-
Chicago.
I'm sorry.
You only get to vote once.
Once.
Yes, but Atwood says yes.
4-0 vote to approve.
I don't know who's more offended, Tom or me, for being confused in our appearance. Item 4G, 10262, amendment of Chief of District Attorney Investigations Classification Specification. It is the same as D, E, and F, basically. The chair will entertain a motion. No, is there any public comment? Chair will entertain a motion for passage
Move to approve.
and a second.
A second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Perez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
Yes.
Commissioner Atwood.
Yes.
I have 4-0 vote to approve.
Our next item. I think this is why you're all here. I'm clairvoyant. Item 4H, 10267, the presentation and acceptance of classification and compensation study reports conducted by Koff and Associates. So I'm going to slightly change here. I'm going to allow for public comment before or after, but you don't get both. Okay, so okay, and My trusty phone will serve as the timer. It's 3 minutes. I realize I take 4 minutes to say hello, but I'm going to restrict you to 3 minutes. And if you hit the 3-minute mark, I'll give you a gentle wave. And we'll ask you, we would ask that you go to the lectern, identify yourselves, and for the record, then we will listen. Staff, do you have anything to add before we do this?
Well, we do have Carrie Mercer, our project manager, here to have or to show our presentation. I think it might be helpful as it's informational. So it's entirely up to you, but I just thought it may be helpful because she does have information that she'd like to share regarding the class and comp study.
Yes, I just heard that some people wanted to speak ahead of time.
Okay.
Right. So just a reminder to the public that we do not respond to public comments. You make your statement, we say thank you. So don't be offended when we say thank you very much. Okay. And then we will get, I see 4 people there. And so then we will get on with the presentation. And then we will allow public comment afterwards. Okay. So if you will identify yourself, sir.
Yes, thank you, Commission. My name's Kian Honorig. I am the president of the Madera County Prosecutors Association. Today, I understand the commission is receiving the reports. However, our position for the association is we're objecting to it and ask that you would object and reject these reports. Our position is that the report does not comply with our MOU agreement with the county. Our agreement with the county was compared to compare our top non-supervisor positions, which is our seniors, we have 4 levels, our seniors to other top non-supervisory position with other counties. And this report provided by COF, out of the 10 counties, only 5 of them were top to top, and 5 are considered non-top to top non-supervisor positions. So basically means there are 5 counties that have a level higher, but they did not choose to use that pay scale to compare our top pay scale. So it means that our top attorneys that are not supervisors are being compared to, like, say, a rank 4 versus a 5, for example, Fresno County. Fresno County has rank 4 and seniors, and we're compared to their rank 4s. Our top seniors are compared to the rank 4s, and that's happened to 5 of the counties. We're objecting to that. It's like I said, it's against our MOU. It's not what we agreed to in negotiations. We're urging this county this committee to reject that at this time.
Thank you, sir. Step up to the lectern. Please identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Wise. I work as a senior deputy district attorney for the Madera County District Attorney's Office. I have been employed there since October 2010, initially as an extra help employee, and since April 1st, 2011, as a full-time employee. I've moved from level 1 to senior. I prosecute some of the most serious crimes committed in Madera County, mainly crimes of sexual abuse against children and adults, and also crimes of domestic violence. I am the longest continuously employed employee of the district attorney's office. I've been through 3 district attorneys now and several reiterations of the office, and through periods of chaos and periods of stability. The MOU that we have specified that non-supervisory top positions were to be compared to non-supervisory top positions in 10 counties. That only happened in 5 counties. The report that the commission is possibly going to receive today is flawed and should not be accepted. If I went to Big O Tire or Shetler Tire and they put 3 of the properly sized tires on my car and the 4th was the improper size, I would not receive it. I would tell the tire company to specifically perform on the contract. So this is a contract issue that is being addressed. The contract has been breached and it needs to be performed upon specifically, either by doing an amendment or redoing the salary survey, which is a big job. But it needs to be done properly so that negotiations can be done in good faith when it comes to the salary negotiations that will be done later. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please come up to the lectern. Identify yourself.
Hello, my name is Nina Benjamin. I'm also a deputy district attorney. As my other colleagues have said, I also am asking the council not to accept this study. I am one of the newer deputy DAs, and as one of the newer deputy DAs, I, like our new hires, am hoping to stay on with the county for as long as possible. And I understand that this study will affect my future career decisions as other new hires as well. Again, as already has been stated, our MOU has requested that the studies compare, again, top to top positions. That has not been done here. Out of the 10 counties, as Mr. Onward has stated, only 5 have been compared top to top. And so again, I request the commission to not accept the findings of this study. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final speaker prior to the presentation, please step up to the lectern and identify yourself.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Dunn. I'm a Deputy District Attorney 3 for the County of Madera. Like my colleagues, I'm asking you to reject and not accept the salary survey. Our MOU has very clear language that we are supposed to be compared top to top, and that was not done here. So it is inaccurate, and this is also the second time that this has happened to us. So I'm asking you to reject it so we can have an accurate salary survey as our MOU language has asked for. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for staying within the time frame. I should learn from that. Don't lapse. Okay, and now I apologize, I've forgotten your name. You're with Koff and Associates. So
Commissioners, I did want to note, while Carrie's getting set up there, I did want to note there were a few amendments that were made after we published the or actually the compensation study piece. There was an amendment to Appendix 3, which I'll pass out to you so that you can view for yourself. And it is a little small, so I did highlight it for you. But there was a change to the range placement for the senior accounting technician. It was changed from 8 to 11. And that was to properly place it 10% above the accounting technician 2. And then there was also the placement of the behavioral health services program manager. It was previously omitted, so that was just added. So I will be passing that out to you. And then if anyone from the audience would like a copy, I do have extras.
Good evening.
okay, if you will, please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Carrie Mercer. I'm a project manager with, we're Gallagher now, formerly Coffin Associates. When we began the study, we merged a couple of years ago. Want to bring up the presentation?
I did want to add one other thing. The newly amended full compensation study will be published with the minutes.
It will be probably 10 minutes. Yeah. No, no, just, I try to keep it as short as possible, and just answer questions. All right. Yes, thank you, thank you. All right, so just real quickly, a little bit about us. We were founded in 1984 as Coffin Associates. As I mentioned, we did merge with Gallagher in 2021. We still operate as an independent business unit, just now with the resources of an international company. We specialize in public sector human resources services. Class and comp really is about 70 to 75% of our work overall, though, but we do have a recruitment services arm as well. As I mentioned, we do specialize in public sector, so we partner with all kinds of public sector agencies throughout California, as well as the western region of the United States, and really have a methodology that is straightforward and inclusive of stakeholders across the agency. So our agenda this evening, I'm going to touch on our classification study, the purpose, methodology, and results from that study. Then we'll move into the compensation study overview, where we'll discuss the survey elements, the data collection process, our market findings, and then just some food for thought for the compensation structure and strategy development, and then I'll just open it up for questions. All right, so first, the classification study, the purpose of the study and the objective that we're trying to accomplish by conducting the study is to end the study with up-to-date class descriptions and an up-to-date class plan. As we know, work can change over time, and some job families and some bodies of work change more rapidly than others. And so one of the things that we're looking at is as those class descriptions and ensuring that they are representative of the work that's being performed by the positions in the classifications. We're looking at legal compliance with things like Fair Labor Standards Act and Americans with Disabilities Act. So certainly want to be sure that whatever we develop is consistent with those. The classification system and the class descriptions really provide the foundation for most, if not all, of the HR processes. So when you look at things like recruitment processes, career pathing for employees, training opportunities and employee development, providing the basis for objective performance evaluations and an equitable compensation system, it really kind of binds all of that together. And so that's really what we're searching to accomplish through the study, is to be able to provide that foundation for those human resources processes. So our methodology starts with initial meetings. We met with human resources just to get a sense of, where have you been? How long has it been since you've done a class study? We met with executive team members, so department heads across the agency. We also met with employee representation just to get a sense of where are the pain points, what are some concerns, what's working well, what is not working well, just so that we have some context to kind of understand what we're stepping into before we start the study. We conducted orientation meetings with employees where we gave the opportunity to ask questions, and we also described the process and kind of what our methodology was so that they had an idea of what to expect. Then we moved into the PDQ, completion and review phase. PDQ stands for Position Description Questionnaire, and this is the instrument that we use to collect data about bodies of work across the county. Then we conducted interviews with employees, supervisors, and department heads, and developed draft class concepts and class descriptions. The methodology, it is worthwhile to point out that this is a point in time study, and as we already acknowledged, we know that work can change over time, and certainly in a process that can take as long as a countywide classification study can take, we would understand that there may even have been some shifts or changes in work even since we collected the PDQs and developed our recommendations. And so all of our recommendations are based on that initial data collection with the idea that we're providing deliverables in terms of future maintenance and to help support the county in that effort as well. But I just wanted to point out the point in time nature of the study. So overall results for title changes, and this was discussed in a little more detail in the report. We recommended title changes for 279 positions in 110 classifications. And for reclassifications, those recommendations were for 58 positions representing 29 classifications. And really where the title changes and the reclassifications come from is one of the things that we're trying to accomplish through this is a consistency in titling conventions, for instance. So if someone says, I'm an analyst 2, that there's a general understanding of what that means, that 2 level is that journey level within the classification series. If someone is identified with the title of supervisor, there are, regardless of the job family or the classification series that that position is in, there should be expectations that there would be similarities in supervisory responsibilities and administrative responsibilities for any supervisor classification across the county. And so while we were looking at establishing that consistency, again, with the intent of making the classification system also more user-friendly for all stakeholders to be able to have that consistency and identify certain responsibilities and duties that would be accompanying a particular level or title. We did some title changing and then some reclassifications based on differences in the body of work actually being performed as opposed to what may have been described in the classification, because jobs can change over time. And in some cases, we found that those jobs or those positions may not be aligned with the classifications that they were in at the time. And so we made recommendations to reclassify. All right, we'll move on to the compensation study overview. So when we began the study, we needed to decide on the survey elements. The survey elements consisted of the comparator agencies or the agencies that would make up the labor market to which we would compare the county, and then identifying benchmark classifications. And so we don't use every single classification to study the market. We choose benchmark classifications, which are, we believe, going to be most consistently found in the comparator agencies. And so also those that kind of provide those anchor points for a job family or a class series. So usually we'll go with a journey level, the supervisor, the manager, and the director level to kind of provide us those anchor points within the job family. The comparator agencies were analyzed. We started with a larger group that was comprised of input from county stakeholders. And we looked at the overall agency profile comparability to the county. And so some of the things that we look at as we're looking at that agency profile is geographic proximity, similarities in cost of living, similarities in the number of FTEs or full-time equivalents. So how many employees? We look at expenditures, population served, and then services that are provided through in-house staff versus being contracted out. The idea being that we are trying to establish a list of those agencies which have which are similar to Madera, which are relevant to the labor market, and which also have similar services that they're staffing with their own staff rather than contracting out, to give us the best opportunity to find matches in the market to those benchmark classifications. So the data collection process, we start with looking at the class descriptions of these potential classification matches in the comparator agencies. We'll look at MOUs, we look at organizational charts, we pull in the salary information. We're making a description to description comparison, and we're looking for overall around a 70% match, understanding that there are going to be peripheral duties assigned to classifications that may look different from one agency to the next. So what we're looking for is a preponderance of the duties to be comparable, the overall purpose of that classification in the comparator agency to be comparable, understanding there may be some differences just because of differences in organizational structure. I do want to comment on this matching methodology. in relation to some of the input that we received tonight, and that we are looking at the bodies of work and looking at those class descriptions and ensuring that the bodies of work are comparable. Sometimes you can have, again, organizational structure differences that drive differences in the levels that you may find within a job family or a class series. And so we're not making a match based on job titles, and we're not making a match based solely on where a classification sits in the organizational structure, because those structures can be significantly different, which can drive significant difference in the bodies of work actually being performed. So when we're making our matches, we are looking at those class descriptions to be sure that it's appropriate. We do look at the organizational charts as well to provide some context, but certainly we are deferring to those class descriptions as our primary source of information. And then we conduct any follow-up needed. So sometimes we'll find class descriptions may not be written really well, maybe ambiguous, maybe very old, or maybe missing altogether. Whatever that may look like, we'll conduct follow-up with those agencies to ensure that whatever match we think we have found, whatever we think looks like the match, that we're getting whatever information we need and whatever clarification we need to ensure that that match is appropriate. So our findings are that overall, the county is 9.6% below the market median. The median is the typical data point that we recommend comparison to. It certainly can be a different, the county can adopt a different pay philosophy should they choose, but that market median is usually that point. It's that exact center spot in the market that we'll usually compare to. So the county is overall 9.6% below market median. The range of that, so that's an average of all of the percentages of the benchmarks. So we range from 54% below market for one of your classifications to 20.7% above market for another classification. So there's a very wide swing in there. You do have 40 benchmarks that are within 5% of the market median, and a general rule would be that within 5% of the median could be considered competitive. Certainly a different margin could be adopted by the county, but generally we say within 5% is competitive. So you have 40 benchmarks that are well within that competitive range. So here is a breakdown by bargaining unit. You can see each of the bargaining units. And again, this is an average. So of the benchmark classifications from each of these bargaining units, we've got those ranges there. So at clerical is 7.3% below, technical 4.4 below, department heads are 14.4 below, elected overall are 6.5 above. Mid-management is 13 below, PGLP is 11.6 below, professional is 9.1 below, service is 9.3 below, and unrepresented is 7.1 below. And then you can see there again, we've got that percentage range. So even within that average, clerical, for instance, has that 7.3% below, but they have one classification that's 24.1% below, and then it goes to 4.2% above. So that's our breakdown by bargaining unit. I can leave this here for a moment if you'd all like to take a look, or we can move on.
This is median, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
it's to comparison to the median data point, but this
Okay.
is an average of all of the percentages compared
Okay,
to that
average
median.
and median are not the same.
That's correct. So
If you would please explain to the
Sure.
panel, because there's mean, median, and mode.
Sure. So we recommend the median for the comparison point when you're choosing a point in the data set for a given benchmark, because it is not swayed by outliers. It's not as impacted by outliers as the average is. So if you have a really, really low paying agency, it can drag that average down, even though you might find that most of your agencies are sort of hovering within this middle point. And so same thing with an outlier to the other end. If you have a very high paying agency and the rest are kind of down in another area within that data set, it skews that data point. And so the median really is that middle data point. It's representative of where most of those data points within that data set are sort of hovering.
So you are saying the median point is there's as many below as above.
That's correct.
It is not the average salary. It's
That's
just
correct.
the middle
That's correct.
number. I
Yes.
just wanted everybody to understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Mean would be the average
yes,
and mode would be the most common.
right,
Okay.
right. And so that median data point really, again, for that reason is why we recommend using the median versus the average, which can really be skewed pretty heavily, particularly for those benchmarks where we might not have found 12 matches. And so we do require, so we started with 12 agencies. We require at least 4 matches in order to provide any kind of statistical analysis of the market, because any fewer than that really allows undue influence of each of the agencies that are in that data set on that overall statistical analysis. So we use the SEC guideline around 4 or more. And so you also will note on the data sheets that some of them indicate insufficient data, which means that we had 3 or fewer matches, and we did not do a statistical analysis for those and instead used internal salary relationships with other classifications to establish some kind of recommendation for those. All right, so next really it's kind of the jumping off point for us here. We provide that market data as a reference point, provide some observations and recommendations based on these findings. From here, the county will really kind of take the step of deciding the compensation philosophy. As I mentioned, we typically recommend the median as the comparison point. That can be a philosophy that the county adopts, or maybe a different compensation philosophy. Step 2 then would be sort of that compensation structure design around whatever philosophy the county decides to move forward with. The one that we've provided, once again, has been based on median. Step 3 then is to place those job classes within that structure once the pay philosophy is decided on and the structure is built. And then step 4 would be to determine actual employee pay after you've sort of developed the system. So you go through the systematic approach to develop those structures and then actually place employees into that structure. And then from here, it's continued maintenance and administration of that structure, which we've provided input or provided information around methodology and options that can be taken for implementation, as well as ongoing maintenance and administration, understanding that a compensation structure, similarly to a classification structure, is not static. It will require maintenance and administration, and it will change over time. And so we've provided some tools to assist the county through those processes. And that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any commissioners have questions? Commissioner?
All right, for the sake of addressing some of the concerns, I know we had members of the district attorney's office. I'm looking at the study here, and this is going to be page 67 of 189. Under Deputy District Attorney 4, I see there's 10 matches that were compared, but Madera County's has the 11th. We're not quite there in the median, right? How could that happen with these specific jobs?
That Madera County isn't in the median?
Correct, yeah.
Well, I would say that the other agencies have potentially adjusted salaries at a different interval than the county has. There can be any number of issues that can come up that difference in pay philosophy. Some counties may elect to be more aggressive payers.
So are we looking at the current salaries or the proposed salaries on this, on a
Current.
page like
Those
this?
are the
Okay,
current.
okay.
And so we use the current, and it's worth noting also that the median calculation for each of the benchmarks does not include Madera County's salary in that data set. So that is not impacting the statistical analysis at all. So we use the current salary for comparing. This is where Madera County is now. This is where the market is. And based on that, establishing what the percentage difference is between actual and the market is how we came about building that structure out with the recommendations.
Okay.
So appendices 3 and 4, if I remember correctly, I don't have the report in front of me, is the structure that's built from the data that was collected and presented in Appendix 2.
And these appendix threes, these are the proposed salaries.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
You gotta excuse me. I got these 2 pages, and then I gotta scroll through the 1,291 page PDF.
Mhm.
So give me just a second.
While the commissioner is looking for that, you mentioned point in time. When was that point in time that the information was collected?
So the PDQs were completed and submitted in, I think it was, there was quite a span between when we started receiving them and when we received the last one. So we had the PDQs completed and submitted end of last year, and in the first quarter of this year. And the data, the compensation data was collected for whatever was effective with the new fiscal year. So would have been in July or August, assuming that the salary schedules that were made effective on that date were available at the time.
So he was talking, when was the spot?
Sure. So the PDQs were collected end of last year and in the first quarter of this year
So
for the classification study.
end of 2022 and
Yes.
beginning of 20, so over a 6-month span, 3-month span?
I would say we were receiving them at least 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And then the compensation data was collected in, I think we started in July. We did follow-up in August and potentially some follow-up in September because of the turnover in the fiscal year. We were trying to follow up with those agencies to be sure that their most recent salary schedule was available and that we were collecting the most recent data available.
And that those months are 2023.
Correct.
Okay. Then I notice my next question, then I'll go back to Commissioner Perez. Have you found it yet?
Yes, I
Okay,
did.
okay, well, one quick question. I noticed you had 12 comparable agencies. And I'm kind of curious. There's a vast difference between Fresno County and Yolo, Sutter, Mariposa, and Nevada counties. There's
Mhm.
a vast difference I work in Mariposa County. We're 50 years behind the times and happy. And so, and Fresno. So, and then you chose 10 of those. So which 2 did you eliminate?
So no, all 12 on that list were our comparator group. So we started with a list of, I think we had 25 potentially, between 20 and 25 agencies. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which ones were eliminated,
That's
but
okay.
the 12 that were selected
Are
were
those?
the top 12 ranked. So when we looked at those criteria that I mentioned earlier, we were looking at geographic proximity, number of FTEs, all of that good stuff. Based on those criteria, those 12 were the top ranked agencies. So yes, there is definitely vast differences, but Fresno County being so close, obviously that's going to help its ranking because it's certainly relevant then to your labor market because you're plucking from the same labor market essentially. Yeah.
Right, the commuters.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Perez.
You guys keep going. I got a little bit more scrolling to do here.
Oh, I haven't tried it yet. I was listening. My wife gets mad at me if I don't listen, so you got the benefit of that.
I'll ask a question.
I do.
And I'm looking, I don't. Page 1105. And its title is a market compensation data. and it has 4, 5, 6, 10 different counties. And yet when we get to the next salary increase or the next percentage increase, there's a lot of unknowns. And this is just one sample. But then some of the other ones that are above that may only have 7 or 8 counties, and then some only have 3 or 4. But we've gone through so much studying and getting information from everywhere, and yet we still have a lot of unknowns.
So we will indicate the next upcoming increase and the date of that increase when it is known by those agencies and when it is for public consumption. And so what we often find is that if agencies are at the end of their contracts with their bargaining units, they may not have a COLA planned on the books yet because they're still in the process of negotiating that. And so that is an agency by agency issue. It's also even within agencies, bargaining unit by bargaining unit. And so that unknown only it's unknown when their next COLA will be and what that percentage will be. Not that the data itself is unknown. It's just that any future COLAs were not available to the public at the time. So they may have been in the process of even completing or ratifying an MOU, but if it's not been made public yet, they will not provide that information to us.
Okay.
You know, just to kind of answer my own question, so I bounced between page 1195 and 1068, in case any of my fellow commissioners want to take a look at that. And that does confirm that the new proposed salaries for example, the district attorney 4, deputy district attorney 4, would then be placed in a medium salary range based off of the proposed salary increase. But my question is, so we have 10 matches in that sense, or in that survey. There was 2 that were excluded, and it says not counted NC, right? Is it possible to get those salaries still inputted so that we could see, you know, maybe why they were?
NC means non-comparable, which
Okay.
means that those agencies did not have a classification that had a comparable body of work.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. Trying to figure this out. You said we were 9.6% below the median.
On average, yes.
Okay,
So,
on average median, that's kind of
well,
contradiction there.
so
Oh,
there's a percentage gap from median for each of the benchmarks. And
okay,
that percentage is provided on the result summary.
okay, but what I'm trying to figure out, and for everybody else, is if median is the middle number, how many numbers are on that span?
In a 12 agency data set, there would
There'd
be
6 on each side.
and the median would be the average between the 2 center is how that's calculated. When there's not an
Right.
odd number of
Right, okay,
data.
so you have that center of the 2 numbers, okay, that I understand. And we're 1/10, we're 10% below that. That sounds significant.
It is, 9.6% is significant. But again, within 5% of market median would be considered competitive or not especially troublesome. So you're not that far outside of that.
Okay, but if you're telling me that 5% is competitive, and you're telling me that we're almost twice. Okay, excuse me, I'm not a statistician, but to my way of thinking, that's twice as uncompetitive.
Yeah, it's, I
And-
mean,
and so we have wonderful employees in Madera County. I love them all. And, and 20 miles down the road is the Bulldog. That's a short commute.
Mhm.
And if you're 10 or 15% below that, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, gee, the cost of gas isn't that bad, especially if they live in the ranchos.
Right. I mean, certainly and individual classifications looking at, some of the individual classifications are much farther off than that. And so those would certainly be most vulnerable
Okay.
for retention and from a recruitment perspective as well.
And then one final comment or question. I heard 3 or 4 people mention you didn't do top to top. You did 5 of them, not top to top. So if I'm going to pick on somebody, if I'm the executive or if I'm the supervisor of a department, and in Fresno County, the top is here, and you went to number 5, I know what that's like. I'm a teacher in Mariposa, and my salary compared to Fresno isn't even close. $30,000 a year difference.
So our methodology is that we match based on the body of work. And if the county had a different arrangement to base on organizational structure, we are an objective third party that comes in and we have our methodology, and that would not be a methodology that we would that we would encourage, and it wouldn't be something that we would do and then put under our name for sure, because that's not a best practice. The comparison, when you want to look at the comparison in terms of what you're paying for a body of work, you want to be sure that you're comparing comparable bodies of work and that you're not underpaying for a bigger job or overpaying for a job that doesn't have maybe the same level of responsibility. So we rely on those job descriptions, and I totally understand the frustration of the individuals who spoke. That is not consistent with our methodology, and it's not something that we would recommend, and we certainly would not be able to include something like that in a study that we would do, because it goes against what our methodology is and what best practice really is for comparison purposes.
So if I understand you correctly, I'm going to throw something in that has nothing to do with your superintendent of schools. So you're saying a superintendent of schools of Fresno County and the superintendent of schools of Mariposa County. They're both superintendents, but they would have vastly different pay scale. And that's what you're saying. So you would not compare Mariposa County schools with 1,800 kids as opposed to Fresno County with 58,000 kids.
Well, that would depend on how the work is described. And I think when you get to those top levels and they have ultimate responsibility for that organization, that certainly does inform that matching process. Also, my experience is that in those larger agencies, the span of control may not be quite as vastly different because there's more bodies. So there's more of a management structure sharing some of that responsibility. And so while there may be very different size districts between Mariposa and Fresno, you might find that the work is described very similarly, just because, again, of organizational structure differences to accommodate the differences in the school population.
So a sheriff's a sheriff.
Generally, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep running it, and I know other people want to talk. So give Bill out with a microphone and I'll go on forever. So any other questions before I open it up to public comment? Okay, please, folks, if you have already commented, okay, please don't.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please identify yourself, step up to the lectern. I think it was very easy to understand, and thank you for the, whatever it is.
I'm tangled up here.
You're not the biggest fly, I am.
There we go.
Okay. So Tyson, please identify yourself.
Good evening, Sheriff Tyson Pogue. I come to you tonight to let you know that it's my opinion that this report's been prepared and submitted to the Civil Service Commission without due consultation with our office. My repeated requests to discuss the positions included in this report were disregarded with the explanation that were not specific to the sheriff's office. So this lack of communication is a particular concern to us. The report proposes alterations to classifications within our office without our knowledge or consent. It's led to confusion, uncertainty, and we have not been given the opportunity to verify or understand the changes. We're blindsided by the report, receiving it only upon the agenda's publication amidst a period of extremely high operational demand. It changes at least 3 critical positions within our office, either changes them or absolutely deletes them. I can go into those, but basically, in short, the job specifications need to be aligned with the specific needs of the sheriff's office, focusing on law enforcement, strategic management, and high-level liaison work, which are essential for our operation. The revised specifications appear to dilute these aspects, leaning more towards general, administrative, and financial management. I'm urging the board not to accept this report as it currently stands. It's imperative that HR and the consulting team initiate meaningful communication and consider feedback from the departments impacted by the changes, particularly those vital to public safety and law enforcement. The current process lacks transparency and collaborative engagement, which is necessary for such impactful decisions. I appeal the board to recognize the specific needs and responsibilities of the sheriff's office and address our concerns with the seriousness they warrant. Thank you for considering these crucial efforts or these crucial issues, and I'm hopeful for a resolution that respects and upholds the critical nature of law enforcement and the roles within Madera County.
Thank you, sir. Rebecca, here we go.
Good evening, Rebecca Martinez, Clerk Recorder. I'll be brief. The report, study, whatever we want to refer to it as, proposes to undo what was already vetted by the previous HR director, approved by the Board of Supervisors and this body. And that was about 2 years ago. They're changing some of the titles that give the appearance that there is a demotion that's taking place. But in addition to that, this body and the board and HR went through a process of fixing internal equity issues. Those internal equity issues have not been, they've been recommended but not considered yet. I would propose that those equity issues be looked at before this body accepts the proposed study or report. What I'm really asking for is that we put it on pause until we have an opportunity to digest the study. We haven't had much time to review it in total. 1,000 pages plus was a bit much during a holiday weekend. It's a lot to absorb. And so for myself internally, I haven't had an opportunity really to compare job descriptions with other departments, which is one of those things that HR is going to have to do ultimately. But it seems to me that we're getting the cart before the horse if we don't have that part ready. So anyway, that's my request. Also, I'd like to add a complaint, and that was the lack of transparency and timing.
Thank you. If you would please step to the lectern and identify yourself.
I'm Brian Glover, Deputy Assessor, Real Property, and Brett Frazier, our elected assessor, has asked, couldn't be here tonight, but he asked me to read a statement in. I am deeply concerned about this process and how it has moved forward. We have been engaged in this issue for almost 2 years, and as department heads, we have been given pieces of information without ever being made aware of the whole picture. Not just how it relates to the county overall, but even in our own departments. Major changes to longstanding key positions have not been explained or justified. When asking for job descriptions for countywide job descriptions that have nuanced requirements, we have been told that they're not ready. Now we are bringing this forward to the Civil Service Commission without time to react and advocate for our employees, which has caused much concern and uncertainty for our valued staff. This report is over 1,000 pages with no mention of compensation until after page 1,000. I understand that the Board of Supervisors were only notified of the results when it was released in this board packet. This has been a process plagued with delays and is now seemingly being rushed to the finish line with little to no regard for the impact to morale of our staff or to overall operational health of our organization. I urge this commission to hold off on making any decisions without proper time for all departments to digest this information and make the proper recommendations that will affect our staff for years to come. I also spoke with Tracy Kennedy, the elected tax collector. She's in Sacramento and couldn't be here tonight, but she would like for the record that it be noted she has similar concerns as well. And as acting assessor for the year of 2022, I kind of started this process, but they came and interviewed my staff in November, but never interviewed me as a supervisor or a department head at that time. And Brett hasn't been contacted either. We have some concerns with some of the changes they're suggesting without talking to the departments that are actually doing it.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, I gotta reset. Okay, if you'll please identify
All
yourself.
right, am I good to go?
You're good to go.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Jared Carter with the Public Works Department. I do have some of the same concerns as some of those who have spoke previously. One other thing, or a couple of other things I wanted to point out, maybe specific to Public Works, is, we've had a chance to briefly review some of the job specs, and it does seem like some of the changes are undoing some things that we tried to put in place and work with specific positions in our department, especially when it comes to some licensing and things that we require for some of our positions. Additionally, I would say that from what I understand, our county code actually requires the compensation study to not only consider other local agencies, but also private firms. That is something that as Public Works, we deal with and compete with constantly in the engineering field, especially. It's something that I can tell you that a lot of other counties and agencies are constantly having conversations about how to keep up with in comparison to private agencies and private entities who are vying for the same workforce that we are. So again, my understanding from the county code is that is something that is required to be looked at as part of the compensation study. I don't think that was done with this process. And then lastly, again, I just wanted to point out that, there are positions in our department that we've worked to establish that meet the needs of our department in specific ways. And in some cases, we've got positions that have been undone and now turned into more of a countywide position versus a specific position to our department, which is vital for our operation. So I would just encourage you to consider these comments in your consideration for accepting this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Are there any other comments to be made? So commissioners. Okay, I'm gonna go to council. Okay, commissioners, we have before us the task to accept the report, decline the report, or the possibility, I guess, of pausing and tabling our decision, if that's correct, Counselor? Do we have the legal right to say we want to think about it?
My understanding of what you have is based upon the agenda item that you're giving a presentation of the results of the study. So my understanding of what's happening is that you've been given the presentation and then you're being asked to accept it, not implement, which is different. So implementation of any of the results of the study as noted in the agenda item are likely to trigger requirements under the MMBA. Job description changes, potentially compensation changes, of course, anything that is a mandatory subject of bargaining or affects bargaining. So the way that I understand that the matter has been put on the agenda, it's to receive or essentially receive and accept. So yes, to the extent to where if you said we don't want to accept this, your position tonight is to receive the information. If there is a decision by you as a body to not accept it. If it's put to that type of vote, as you please. But I would defer briefly to administration. Am I correctly stating what is on the table tonight under the agenda?
Yes, your counsel.
Okay, and and so the matter would go to a vote to accept. Is that also correct?
Yes.
So, there's no forced vote here. If you vote yes to accept, you vote yes. If you vote no, you vote no. If you have a discussion to table it for a later time, you have the discussion.
Okay, and therein lies the conundrum, because I was presented with more than 1,000 pages of documentation and expected to read it, and I think Madera County employees have every right to accept that we read through this and look at it, and we have faith in staff. But, to make a decision based on, for whatever reason, I got it today, and I don't know if it was my computer or cyber something.
That's a
but
good question for staff. When was this delivered to department heads?
Here,
Ooh.
the key thing here to understand is this is the work product of Coffin Associates. They're presenting their report to us, the county, through you. When you say accept it, you're not accepting the findings. You're not accepting any of the information other than you're accepting a report. We still have to do our due diligence by first talking with our department heads, finding out information that they would like to be changed, and then reviewing that, and then preparing a proposal for bargaining units to negotiate those items. Then after that negotiation is done, then we will come back to you. And at that point, you would then be approving job descriptions, recommending salary placement, and then we would take that on to the board. This is not setting anything in motion other than you're taking in that report. So now we can do our due diligence and working with that report. I just wanted you to know that that is what we believe your role is here today, is just merely to accept it because the commission has the authority over the studies as far as requesting them to be conducted or accepting those reports. And then just as we did with the peace officer class and compensation study, we will be bringing everything back to you for your official either approval, acceptance, however you want to look at it at that point. But that's after negotiating and further discussion with department heads.
And if I may just add to that, my legal opinion is that is very well put, and that is my understanding as well. Looking at the county code itself, any changes to the classification plan, things of that nature, will be brought back to you, and then ultimately then to the board for approval. And you'll see that statement on the front of the agenda packet item as well.
Yeah, I think my issue is the internal turmoil that it seems to have created. We're saying we're bringing it to the Civil Service Commission so that we could approve the use of it internally, but yet it's been distributed out and has caused a lot of fear throughout several departments, out of fear for chaos and job position changes, and it seems a little like what that was distributed out prematurely, right?
The only distribution is the posting of the agenda, and anyone in the audience or the public can review it at that point.
Okay.
I'm understanding what you're saying. You're saying, here's the packet. And if all we were was rubber stamping that we heard a presentation, okay, I accept, when somebody sends me something, certified mail, and I sign, I don't have to agree with any of it. I just have some concerns about the study, and I don't doubt your honesty. I don't doubt your honesty. I just my head is spinning over how I think the data was collected. And in that case, I would find the study unacceptable. And but I don't want to reject the study. That a lot of work has gone into it, and there's probably a great deal of accuracy there. I would just like to have a month or a couple of weeks at least to look at it and let our wonderful staffs look at it and come back and hear and revise this. But if I'm forced to say I accept it as I think there with its flaws, or not accept it, I'm being forced to say I won't accept the package.
Yeah, and in all honesty, we can't do anything with it until the county accepts it or receives it. So then it would be delaying any work on our end to work with the bargaining units, work with the department heads on finalizing all of this stuff. Again, I guess there's a confusion over the word acceptance. It is not that you're accepting any of the information that's in the report. It's merely, thank you very much for that package. I appreciate it. I'm going to go now deliver it on to HR or whomever to be able to do the work that they need to do with that project, with that work.
I did want to add, maybe acknowledging is maybe a better word of thinking or a way of thinking of it. It's more of an acknowledgement that COF has prepared this document or this documentation. I did want to add, and I don't know if I'm speaking incorrectly, but if we do bring this back in a few weeks after we've heard concerns, we aren't able to add those concerns to Carrie's report because this is Carrie's or Coffin Associates or Gallagher's report. We would not be able to make any modifications to her report. And what Susan has explained is we can make changes internally. Once you acknowledge the report, then we can move forward with the bargaining units and the department heads. At that point, we can make changes because they would be our changes. They would be Madera County's changes. But again, we wouldn't be able to come back in 2 weeks and alter her report in any way.
So what you're asking is that we say, thank you very much for the effort and time you put into this presentation. We will take it under advisement and turn it over to our HR people for further review.
Correct. Correct.
But HR team, I think, our civil service duty here is to hear our employees as we represent each of the districts in which they reside in. And their concerns, which becomes our concern, is them kind of being left in the dark with it, that maybe not having involvement, feeling blindsided towards this. So I think there needs to be some mitigation of action there in order to, go and reconvene with these department heads and give them a little bit more confidence than what they seem to have right now.
Ms. Mercer, would you mind speaking to the collaboration that you've received? And I just want to, again, remind you that we can't make any changes to the report until we've received it. So even if we discuss this now, we're not able to make any changes to it until it is received and we can start working on it.
Green light.
Okay, there, sorry. Part of our process did include interviews with employees. We did speak with supervisors, and we did speak with some of the department heads and we've reached out to some that we didn't get responses from. But we spoke with, I believe, every department head as we rolled this out. And as we were delivering to the county, we had conversations, we had follow-up conversations as necessary to clarify. And in terms of the internal conversations, I believe that there were internal conversations regarding individual department allocations and kinds of things.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Mercer about some of the comments that were made today that maybe she can elaborate a little further on for you? I just want to make sure that you have all the information you need.
Well, I reading the crowd, the audience, there's your last statement. There's clearly some department heads that were not reached out to. And I believe they need to be reached out to, and they need to come to you and say, hey, we weren't contacted. There needs to be something done with that. But Susan, you're talking about, we're just accepting this document to be able to work on it. It's not, we don't have the authority to approve all of these changes at this point anyway,
No,
because there's no agreement between the departments and all the different employee groups and so on and so on.
correct.
My concern is, does the audience understand what we're talking about here? That this is only to make this document available for discussion.
So we are voting on accepting it, but not saying we like it or we don't like it. We are just saying we've received the package. Everybody understands that? Anybody, Sheriff, anybody, you understand that? Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is all we're voting on right now is, did we get the report?
That's correct.
Do we, and a vote that says we got the report, we got the report, but we don't like it. That's not in the vote, correct? Or we do like it? We're only saying we got it.
That's correct.
Sarah?
This is a flawed, poor work product. I don't know why we wouldn't send it back to the vendor for a good, workable work product. Why would we do all the work when we're paying a significant amount of money for a work product? I don't understand.
Right.
I wouldn't accept it. Just like a package from UPS is damaged. Send it back. Get a new one.
And thank you, Sheriff. And so if we reject it, it goes back to Mercer, or I'm sorry, Koff, and they would rework it. We just make no changes. It doesn't kill the deal, correct?
That's something that unfortunately I am not aware of as far as the actual response. I don't know if Ms. Mercer can speak to that, or if Roman can speak to that. We would have to evaluate the information that is on the contract to determine whether or not there wouldn't be additional cost. Again, the work product that they put together is based on information that they've received, reviews, comparing an analysis of other agencies. They've provided us with a document that people don't necessarily agree with, and we can certainly work through those issues. But at the same time, I don't know that that the county would necessarily say that it is a poor work product at this point, because we have not had that conversation.
I feel like a study with such a big impact on every department would, I think, I feel as if Madera should be a little bit more demanding of inclusiveness of those department heads. And the idea that we have, 4, maybe even 5 departments here that are all, saying the same thing where they weren't given that opportunity, that doesn't sit well with me.
I will say that there has been an opportunity for department head communication. Some department heads, I will tell you that we had difficulty in getting responses from. I know that Ms. Mercer has reached out a couple of times to us, and we have contacted those department heads to assist her in that, and not all of them were fruitful. With respect to some of the others, I know that the decision that countywide positions, and what I mean by that is positions that are utilized in numerous county departments. If we were to ask every single department head for specifics, it would have caused perhaps a bottleneck, because it's not just a position that is only in one department. It is in multiple departments. And I know that was a concern for some of the department heads. However, again, I'm not saying that we would not reach out to those department heads and request information and then we can't consider it. I'm just saying we can't do anything right now with the information because it hasn't been technically accepted or received by the county.
Just wanted to reiterate what Ms. Carter said, that we did reach out to department directors, some of them tonight. I have spoken with them. Some of them were non-responsive. So I just wanted to be clear that there was the effort made to get that input and to have that contact.
Okay, as
Oh, please identify
I'm
yourself.
so sorry, Deborah Martinez, Director of Social Services from Madera County. So as the HR Director would know and our CEO would know, I've already stated my opinions on this report that I did go through intentionally. And I appreciate the fact of everybody here, in particular folks in the DA's office and the sheriff. And I understand their frustration because I share it. And I've been very clear on numerous occasions as I've been discussing this report. I did have an interview. Vast majority of my positions are not even reviewed because they're not part of the county family. They're part of DSS. It's a state office that reviews the classifications of my staff. And this report already still took 2 years. My concern is, I was very conflicted coming up here, but it took almost 2 years. I understand what staff are saying in this room, and I believe that it is incorrect. And I think that the philosophy of it that they're suggesting is incorrect, understanding our environment in terms of competition, our environment in terms of new laws and what the minimum wage is happening and what fast food is going to do with our accountants and our eligibility workers. And that philosophy that they say about how these things should be adopted in terms of the salary increases is not taking into consideration everything that's going to face us in tomorrow. And so I've got a lot of problems with it. And yet, as unpopular as I'm going to say, I don't want to delay because it's been 2 years and God knows how long it's going to take to get through the unions and actually get this negotiated. So I'm concerned about just more time. And the reality is, I believe we can still make the case because the things about communications, we hadn't even heard department heads were going to have an opportunity to weigh in before it was going to the unions. That's the communication part. It would have been helpful for that because I had 2 directors contacting me about, okay, so they're going to do that. And I said, it just gets presented, but I didn't know if we were going to have, when is those meetings going to have? How one-on-one as a group or what? That is a communication issue. And I am putting it out there. I do believe we had a communication issue. I think it should have been well known that the department heads were going to have an opportunity to review this document together, whatever form that was going to take. I don't want it delayed only because it's already taken way too long, and we've got too many people that are suffering right now to need to see an increase as soon as possible. And this has already been too long. And again, we will not be able to keep our staff if we've got a county with those kind of increases, and yet they didn't weigh any heavier than somebody in Mariposa, or Yuba. I mean, I'm not going to lose people to Yuba. I don't know how many times we discussed this plan and we said, compare it to the folks that we're going to lose to. Okay, but there's no hospitals on this thing. There's no schools on this. I lose all my social workers in schools who want to work 8 to 5 versus my 24 hours dealing with the public perception of CPS and APS. So even though I absolutely appreciate everybody's time here and I absolutely understand why folks want to say it's a bad product, I don't agree with the product. It's here. It's the only thing we got. It's been 2 years. I want to move on because we're not going to be able to have any changes made to it because if it doesn't follow their philosophy, and I'm sorry, and I apologize, their cookie cutter thing, because you can see the same exact thing in any other county that they've been used. I just want to move on, fix it, and do it right when they negotiate it. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ian Onrig with the Madera County Prosecutor Association. Was a little frustrating hearing the consultant saying like, well, it's based off like counties have different job descriptions. Okay, prosecutors do the same thing across the state. We take cases to jury trial. Now, some may do different higher priority cases, like Ms. Wise. She does sex cases, and she's handled sex cases for years, and she has a very high success rate in prosecuting them. But according to Hoff, she's not comparable to other top-level attorneys. She has to be compared a level down. And so that's our problem with this survey. And our position is that if this commission accepts it, now when we go to the negotiating table, now we have to fight against what we think is a very flawed survey that was done incorrectly, not according to the MOU, and also just basic common sense. we do the same job all over the state. It should be top to top, not choosing some counties like, oh, well, they do little things differently. We do all the same work. If you're a senior, you're required to do high level type of work, whether it's gangs, sex, supervising younger attorneys, it's all the same. And so for that reason, our position is we still ask you to not accept this. Thank you.
Wait a minute, come back, please. Do you agree with Ms. Carter's assessment that this document needs to be accepted, not approved, but accepted into, say, a court of law where it would become evidence, something that can be worked on as a working document?
So I don't.
Do you agree with that assessment?
I disagree. It's just like our position as a negotiating is now we're going to be they're like, well, this is what the contractor says. So why should we follow what you guys are proposing? Why, you know, this is what they're listing. These are the changes they want to do, whether it's like, hey, only compare you 5, or whether, you know, we're going to change your class designation.
Okay, that's not my question. My question is, do you agree or disagree that this document has to be approved as evidence before it can be discussed? That's what it
So if you're
appears to me
asking
that we're
legally,
supposed to
I
be doing.
don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. So
So
I can't.
is there any documentation anywhere that has this agreement that we have to approve this document before we can talk about it, even though we're talking about it?
This is Koff's working document, excuse me, Koff and Associates or Gallagher. It is a project that they are working on that they are trying to give to us so that we can use it as a benchmark to start our negotiations. I don't know how to say it any better than that.
I understand that, but I've never, in all the years I've been doing this, I've never had this conflict come before us that the document had to be voted
It's
on to
always
be
been, it's
allowed.
always been delivered before we've discussed it. In any compensation study we've had that has been conducted by an outside agency, it's always been presented and delivered. And then the negotiation or the discussions within the county have been done. I think that there are outside environmental factors that are involved here. Part of it is the length of time that we've had a study, the issues with the last study that we conducted. I think that is causing some problems. As Ms. Martinez said, the time frame for that it has taken to complete this is another reason why there's more discussion on this. And I can't speak to every other individual's reasons for it. All I can say is, again, this is their work product. They're presenting it to us as far as this is what they have found. We will use it then as a diving board or a jumping board to then have our conversations with the individuals in our negotiations. But if you reject it, we will figure out how to move forward with this, but we can't really do any negotiations with any of the bargaining units until we have an actual working document.
And I think therein lies the conundrum is I think the document, you know, I'm in the throes of getting a church rebuilt. We weren't happy with the architect. We sent it back. We didn't pay him and accept it. We said, no way. And he's still working on it. And I can't imagine that Koff and Gallagher and Associates aren't going to say, if we say, no, we don't want to accept this report, that they're going to say, well, we're done with Madera County and move on. That they're going to say, okay, what do we need to do? And if part of that is simply allowing department heads a month to read it, it'll be exciting reading over Christmas holidays. And I had said no one could, but I let other people. So can we keep it to like a minute and a half?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Commissioner. Thank you again, Jared Carter of Public Works. I mean, I guess I just want to maybe bring something up here. I understand that the action here is to accept this report, but I think as some people have pointed out, if there's flaws in the report and it's not a valid report, I don't know why you would accept it. And, you know, again, as I brought up earlier, in the county code under Rule 11, it talks about the evaluation of compensation plan. And under subsection A, it specifically says the general levels of salaries shall take into account salaries paid by local, private, and public employment by comparative counties. So I don't see that that was included or even looked at in this study. So I think that's just maybe one of some things that are seem to be flawed. I could tell you that our department specifically made some comments on one job specification that we provided back to the consultant, and it was ignored. It was left as it was presented to us. So, I feel like, again, as it's been brought up, some of the collaboration on some of the stuff, I understand that it's taken time and it's been challenging for people to respond to things. We are all working and still trying to, run the county at the same time. So it is challenged to get all that done in a timely fashion. But I do think that it's important that those comments and things that were presented should have been considered or at least discussed with the departments when they were brought up. So
Thank you. Okay, two more and then, okay. Since you stood in long. Please re-identify yourself.
Get a little closer.
Get closer.
There we go. Tracy Wise, thank you for letting me speak again. In February of 2023, an email was sent to the company that did the salary survey that was basically a contract specifying top to top is to be compared for all 10 counties for the district attorney's office senior position, and the other counties either 5 or senior or whatever they call their top non-supervisory position. That contract was not upheld. Therefore, and I'm only talking about this one section, that is flawed information. To accept or receive flawed information leads to human resources being able to use that information as a benchmark for starting the salary negotiations. That is improper to do that. It is flawed. The foundation is not sufficient. And to use the analogy of Commissioner Fry, you cannot accept into evidence something that is flawed or incorrect. And then once it's in evidence, you can't change it. That's illegal. But that's the analogy that you were using. So I decided to expand on it. It's illegal to change evidence once it's been accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last person, since you stood in line so nicely too.
Stephanie Dunn with the District Attorney's Office. I just want to reiterate what Ms. Weiss said. I understand that COP is saying that they would not use that methodology, but that's what the contract said, and that's what they are hired to do, and they disregarded it completely, which is unacceptable. I would not go to a restaurant and order something and get the wrong thing and say, well, that's fine, because that's what you want to do. I would send it back. Additionally, I understand that they're arguing that if you accept it in, that is only going to be used as a benchmark for negotiations, but that still hurts the unions when we go to negotiate, and our benchmark is completely flawed information. When you negotiate, you have a top end and a bottom end, and you meet in the middle. But if your top end is completely flawed, that hurts your negotiation. So I'm asking you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? There's a beautiful system. We all get to talk. Okay. Oh, okay. Please identify yourself.
Tanya Say, Chief Information Officer. Thank you for taking one last comment. First of all, I just want to say that why I've kind of hesitated to stand up is because my colleagues have all definitely stated exactly what I've been feeling through the entire process. One of the main things is that, yes, we have been given an opportunity to provide information. I don't feel like that information's been heard. But one of the things that has not been stated earlier tonight is that in the non-comparison categories, in one of my positions in particular, because it stood out like a sore thumb, like I knew for sure there was a problem with it. So I went and started looking myself. I started looking why there were no non-comparators. And sure enough, we found comparators in other counties. Now, we're IT, so maybe some of the job descriptions are hard to sort through, but we for sure found comparators and that we could highlight. That's what we'll do, is we'll actually highlight so that we get that 70% match that we need to get of what what's included in those outside job descriptions and as to compared to what's in the job description that's presented here tonight. So I just wanted to say that, and that's going to be a very time-consuming process, regardless of whether you accept the study tonight or you don't accept the study tonight. There just has to be a path forward, whether it's through Coffin Associates or whether it's through HR. We as department heads have to have a step forward to be able to start the collaboration process, the true collaboration process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? The commission. Leave it up to you. Any comments? I don't see the enthusiasm.
I still haven't got the clarity that I was looking for on what requires this document to be accepted, to be able to discuss it. I guess I'm looking for something in writing that says to that effect.
Commissioner, if I may, we believe COF's research analysis was thorough and based on best practices. But we also understand that our county is unique in some ways, and we may need to modify some of those classifications before we propose anything to the units or bring back our recommendations to the commission. And it is our plan and our intention to meet with department heads to get their feedback, to hear their concerns, and consider that feedback and any modifications that we do to any of the classifications or compensation before we prepare the proposals. And we will negotiate these proposals in good faith according to what's in the MOUs. So it's not, we're not going to ignore the language that's in the contracts and try to negotiate around that. We understand what the contract says, and we will negotiate any of our all of our proposals in good faith. So I just want to go on the record and state that.
What's your pleasure?
Yeah, I certainly see the concern where, the word benchmark, we intend to use this as a benchmark. First, we're approving it for further review, but now we intend to use this as our benchmark. And as the concerns that we've heard today have stated, that does put other commissions or boards or deciding factors, it gives them the ability to rubber stamp a little bit without being as thorough. And we appreciate you stating that, giving that commitment, but when it's all said and done, that's something that, that there's a reason for this process. And
I think based on the input from county department heads that feel that their departments weren't heard, that we ask this to go back to Ms. Mercer's organization and give her 6 weeks to address those concerns before it's accepted by this board.
If I may, again, it was brought up by administration earlier. I don't know if, I don't know if that's something that is within their contract or not. So I'm not entirely certain. You would probably need to pose that question if it's something that can be done from the entity prior to saying you need to go back and do this, because you may not have that contractual right to do so.
But if the board rejects it, if this commission rejects it, Mr. Mercer is going to be back in the office tomorrow saying, we got to fix something.
If that's part of her contract, I think
Yeah,
that's
that's
I
part
don't
of
know.
it. Again, and I'm speaking without having a knowledge of the contract or the statement of it, but with the county has entered into an agreement with an entity to provide this work product. To the extent it has provided a work product for you this evening, whether you feel it's final and complete is your opinion. What can be done in terms of going back and amending it. I think that's a conversation that you have to have potentially before then just, making an amendment to your motion and voting that, because I'm not entirely certain that that is an obligation of theirs, but again, you can ask.
But there's also, I'm not hearing any love of this amongst my fellow commissioners. So the other possibility is that if no one makes a motion to accept or reject it, and no one makes a second, it would die, it dies for lack of anything and it goes back. It hasn't been rejected or accepted.
It hasn't been rejected, hasn't been accepted. That's true.
So-
Whether there's an obligation on their end to complete it contractually to whatever extent, I don't know.
But if there's no motion to accept and there's, or reject,
Hmm.
well, I don't know that she can speak for the company on what would happen if it's just not accepted, other than she's going back and saying to the boss, oh, well, we start over, or we fix it and we call Madera County and let's get this thing moving.
And I would also just note, if you don't mind, in terms of the process and how it went forward with the way communication was done or wasn't done. Again, if it's outside of the process that the county has, is that something that you're asking to be done? I'm not entirely certain, but you would want to stay within the rules, of course, of what has to be done for a compensation study. So,
But
to the extent that you're not satisfied with the level of communication, so long as that's required, then certainly I think that's the board's obligation to say whether you're satisfied or not.
well, I think we have great faith in our staff. Ms. Mercer comes off as very intelligent and articulate, and I appreciate it, but I'm not hearing anything. So is there a motion to act on this? Tom?
I still haven't got an answer to my question. Is there a requirement to accept this document before they can talk about it?
I don't know if that is necessarily within the county rules. I've been looking through them to see if there's something like that. I think from what I hear from all parties considered, there has been discussion to whether there was discussion that some parties feel was complete, thorough, and done satisfactory. Obviously you have some contention there. To say that there could be no discussion, I think there has been discussion. I don't know. I think perhaps what is being said at the table up front is that, and you'll have to clarify that because I can't speak for anyone. My understanding of it, again, this isn't a legal opinion, so perhaps it's not proper, but I'll say it, is that they're saying we can discuss this further in terms of what the results were with the bargaining units once we have an acceptance of these are what the results are within this work product. From what I've heard, there's already been discussion, at least with some individuals at some levels, about what's going to be done. But again, that needs to be clarified with the administration and the company.
I think it was stated that none of this document became public until it was on our agenda.
The document itself, but I mean the discussions about the methodology, things of that nature.
Right.
I'm not sure if that took place, but it seems as if there was some discussion along those lines with certain individuals. In terms of discussing this at a bargaining table, if there is no accepted document, it obviously would be difficult to discuss at the bargaining table. However, of course, all this information is public, so it is available in different pieces, but not as a work product presented to the county.
I have a question for staff. You heard the same concerns from from leadership here within the room, several different departments. Do any of those concerns hold true, or do you feel are going to propose an issue when negotiating with those bargaining units?
I don't know if it'll propose an issue necessarily, but it'll give us an idea of what we're going into, and we can be prepared for those conversations a little bit more when we get to the table. But like I said, we know that the county structure may be different and unique compared to other counties, and that we'll have to negotiate some modifications to some of the classifications and possibly compensation. But prior to that, we're going to meet with department heads to get their feedback. But we can't do that unless the report is accepted.
Then that goes back to Commissioner Fry's question, right?
Yes, and if I may add, Tom, to answer your question, we did get a legal opinion a few years ago, where our previous human resources director did, which is why we brought the peace officer class and comp, or not class and comp, but peace officer class and comp study before you last year. So we did get an opinion which said you have the authority to conduct or initiate studies or compensation studies. And so again, that is the reason why you saw us bring before you the peace officer class and comp study, where we just merely presented to you, you acknowledged it. We met with the various bargaining units for changes and then brought those changes back to you if they were substantial in regards to job description changes. And then any range placements, we did take to the board for final approval with those job descriptions.
Okay, are we ready? I'd like to bring this to an end. So, is there any interest? Do I hear a motion to either accept or reject? Do I hear a motion or?
You should do a motion on its own. Yeah.
Okay, an emotion. Do I hear a motion to accept the report? There being no motion, it dies. It just dies, and we could put it on the table for it. The issue dies. So we've concluded it. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. Now I'll let all the prevailing smart people figure out how we're going to work through this. And so the next thing on the agenda is staff reports.
We have no staff reports this evening.
Okay.
I would like to make a comment, though, about our computer system. Finding this document was so huge, trying to get through it all and then have pages turned, things like that are easy enough to turn them around. But for people that are computer illiterate, but somebody who doesn't use a computer daily or hourly, you know, struggle with how to get through some of that. I wish there was a simpler system where what we had before with the split screens. If there's a way that IT can get us back to stuff like that, that makes following these documents, point A to point B on through these documents without having to go all the way down the whole side with 1,500 pages or whatever number there was there. Try to make it a little more
We can
user-friendly.
certainly reach out to IT. I don't know if it would be feasible because we are limited to the system we're using, so.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. So that we can adjourn. Thank you. Anybody else? And I wanted to make two comments. A, thank you all of you who came and gave up your evenings. But also, as we adjourn this meeting, I would like to adjourn it in honor of all of Madera County employees who worked over the holidays. Well, I got to stuff my face with food. I knew there were sheriffs and responders and public works people doing the work that keeps the county going. It's very much appreciated. So we stand in adjournment in honor of our wonderful Madera County employees. At least my roads will be fixed.